says, back in my day, I wonder what day was it? Gabby Hayes? I mean, what is this? Before Gunsmoke and I Love Lucy, at least. Michael Steele for the defense here. Political party. I mean, guess who was up there playing chaplain the day that they did the Shiloh vote with 3 U.S. senators present? They voted unanimous consent to go ahead and intervene in a family matter down in Florida involving a woman who was on a respirator, who was, you know, the whole situation we're now aware of. A very sad
figure out
case
how to
of
make
a woman
Brussels
there,
sprouts.
a young woman dying at that age, but getting involved in that case as a U.S. Congress.
Stuck in the craw of a lot of conservatives around the country because those of us who believe that the government has no place in the bedroom and has no place in the health decisions that the families have to make, which is the crux of our argument against Obamacare in the first place. All of that gets thrown out of the window, and I think this case, this situation, is a little bit worse than the Shiloh, because at least in the Shiloh you did have some women who understood that would probably be with the party's position in terms of wanting to have the family make this choice or that choice. But here, this is much more personal to every woman. And so now you have the party, or at least some voices out there, that have moved this off of the conversation on the state.
Hey, look at the Ford Harley Davidson, like your jacket. The Harley Davidson has a supercharger.
They have access to
Ford Harley Davidson.
You need to move off this message right now and focus.
Have you got anything hard on this? Any data?
Well, we have. I've seen some early polling from inside a number of the campaigns that is not pretty. We're beginning to hemorrhage independent women and women more broadly. They're moving away from our leading candidates, Santorum and Romney, around this issue. And they have to figure out a way to stop the bleeding and then retract the conversation about the economy and other things that women are more concerned about than having a bunch of men sit down and decide what their health issues should be.
Yeah, I think a lot of fathers and parents want to know about this, trying to keep people from having birth control as part of their lives. You know, especially just in modern day.
This is a GTO.
Michael and Joe, there were no women present in that first panel that
GTO.
hearing on contraceptive.
GTO.
And today, Democratic
67 GTO.
That slight very clear.
They held a hearing on the administration's decision to ensure that women have access to affordable contraception. But guess who was missing? The women.
For millions of American women, reading the news this morning was like stepping into a time machine and going back 50 years, seeing the headlines and the photos of an all-male panel in the House talking about a woman's right to access birth control.
When will they get this simple, non-debatable fact? The power to decide whether or not a woman will use contraception.
Okay, I'll take one of those.
Not her employer.
Well, let's go on to this issue. It seems to me, in all fairness, Joe, you and I had a different perspective on this. I don't think different values, but different perspective about the way this matter was proceeding a week ago, and then it changed. I think once the president laid down what he considered to be an important distinction, not whether women need full health care, including birth control, as part of the package, but whether or not infringe on what the church, the Catholic Church especially, felt was their domain, what they have to sign their name to. And he said, you don't have to sign your name to it. The government's going to take care of it with the insurance companies. And I think he finessed that. Henceforth, you would think they would have pulled back and said, okay, we made our point. Instead, they pushed forward and said, let's make this a birth control issue. Right?
Right. Because this is not their point. I mean, that was the point of certain church leaders and certain Catholics who felt very strongly about it. That was their point. But once that accommodation was reached and you had Catholic Charities and Catholic Health Association applauding it, Chris, you saw Republicans whose real problem is contraception, not just the religious.
How can it be a problem for them?
I don't know. I mean,
against
explain it.
contraception.
It's broken.
I don't think
Chevy
it is,
Tahoe.
quite honestly. Look, we're forgetting another major player here in this process, and that was the Obama political operation, which I think did a wonderful job of shifting the dynamics of this conversation and focusing
What else
around
is a
the
Chevy?
issue of contraception, because that is a much
Levi.
more
Levi.
explosive conversation
Levi.
in the GOP than
Look at me, boy.
Let me show you one of your top candidates.
Whose car is a Chevy? Is Mommy's car a Chevy?
Clear the air. And I may not be fair,
And
here,
look,
but
Marty.
in an interview last October, not a million years ago, this past October, Rick Santorum, who's now running head-to-head for the Republican nomination, talked about what he called the dangers of contraception. Let's listen.
One of the things I will
Father.
that no president has talked about
Father.
is I think the dangers of contraception are extreme.
VID01915.
Sexual liberty, I mean,
Giant.
many Christian faiths say
Found it.
it's okay. I mean,
Found it.
contraception's okay. It's not okay because it's a license
They're by different.
to do
Yeah, you found it.
Be right back.
Okay.
It's counter to how things are supposed to be. They're supposed to be within marriage. They're supposed to be for purposes that, yes, conjugal, but also unity, but also procreative. And that's the perfect way that sexual union should happen.
Well, I was thinking of the old Bullwinkle show in the Wayback Machine. Where are we going today, Sherman? We're going way back to the year 1953. We're debating contraception.
Well, my view on that is there's a reason why no presidential candidate or president has talked about this issue before, because the church itself has not talked about it.
I haven't heard a sermon on this
in
since
30 or 40 years, because the church's teaching is clear, and what the magisterium of the church lays out is its teaching is that
That's one church.
That's
Our
one
church.
Our church. That's right. This is one church. And then you have your pastors and priests within that church who, from Sunday to Sunday, week to week, guide the faithful along that path on those teachings. It is not the purview, I think, and this is a real big issue here, for me at least, it's not the purview of politicians, I don't care if they're Republicans or Democrats, to get and pontificate on doctrine when it comes to policy. And so I think that you got to keep that.
Well, let's talk politics, John. Let's look at this new poll, because I think this will also clear the air this Friday evening. A new New York Times CBS poll taken this February basically spanned opinion both before and after the president announced his accommodation this past Friday, which kept the religious institutions from having to sign on. 66% support the federal requirement that private insurance plans cover the full cost of birth control. Now, there's a very clearly worded, comprehensive question that says, should it be fully covered without a copay, and it should be a federal requirement. A federal requirement. The people with clear eyes said yes, 66%. No was only 26%, 1 in 4. Your thoughts? I mean, this is a pretty clear public opinion here, I think.
It's very clear, and it's clear among Catholics. You know, interestingly, we had this big debate about what Catholics thought, and Catholics were divided, etc. But when the dust settled, Chris, you know who was really, the only people who were really opposed to this, ultimately, or the people who were most opposed, are born-again evangelical Christians. So again, this is a Christian right issue. It's an issue that they try to use to gin up the culture war. You know, Rush Limbaugh says they're going to win the culture war. I think he's a secret Democrat. I think he's a closet Democrat.
Well, you mean a mole.
Because he is leading Michael's party off a cliff on this issue. All the polls show that, and Michael has the integrity to admit that. This is not something Republicans should want to be talking about, because Americans don't want to talk about it. We settled it a long time ago.
The progressive readers and lovers of Salon are probably happy tonight, and the progressive people who want to see the president reelected must be wondering, is this the luckiest man in the history of the planet? Anyway, thank you. Where did Rick Santorum has come back to haunt your party with his strong new views. Thank you, Michael Steele. Thank you, Michael. I don't know if you're rooting for the other guy or not, but anyway, thank you, John Walsh. Thank you, Michael Steele. Up next, Rick Santorum surged Israel. And now the Obama campaign is considering taking him on down the road. They may have to fight this guy come November. They're getting ready, but they don't want to get too ready, because in a weird way, I think they want him to be the nominee. You're watching Hardball. Not a weird way, common sense way. You're watching Hardball, only on MSNBC.
The Chris Matthews Show, the Sunday show that puts the week in perspective. The hot button issues and nation's top journalists. The Chris Matthews Show.